Hello friends, it's Teresa and I'm here with Open Food Network Canada bringing you another, I hope, useful resource for new and established flower farmers. Now, and we're going to focus today on picking sales channels, but I got to tell you, I made a very big boo-boo because this was a live Zoom meeting yesterday actually, and I totally messed up the recording. So I'd like to introduce you this way to the four speakers we had, and I'm going to give you the presentation that we had. You'll be hearing their audio, but it won't be live. So it's a bit of a mashup here. Not the best quality that you might expect, and I'm so sorry for that. It was totally my goof, and I really am sorry to the guests who put time into the meeting. But at least I'll be able to bring you their voices. So please bear with us. I mean, this is maybe a nice podcast thing. You can go do dishes, do some other work around the house while you listen maybe, because what you really want to hear is these wonderful farmers describing their experiences with different channels, and that's what you're going to hear. So we have Valerie from Picafleur Femme Florale in Quebec, Janice from Harris Flower Farm in Ontario, Sarah from Stone Meadow Gardens in Nova Scotia, and me, I'm Teresa from Garden Party Flower Farm in Ontario. Here's what led me to think this would be a good Zoom. So when we did our survey last year, open survey, 50% of flower farmers said that finding new customers was their number one challenge. But at the same time, 70% said they're going to add a channel. And I thought, a sales channel. And I thought, well, that's a real conundrum. It could be that adding a sales channel helps you get new customers, but it could be that adding a sales channel just makes it harder to find new customers, because now you're finding new customers for two completely different or three completely different channels. So I thought, well, it's worth kind of thinking about channels a little bit. And I'm sort of thinking about being really selective, not putting all your eggs in just one basket in terms of one channel, because that's not a good idea. And in Canada, because our population is so small compared to the US, I mean, I think there are lots of US flower farmers who sell in just one channel, and they do it okay because their population is 10 times what our population is. But here, to make a go of it, you almost need a couple channels. But if you put all your eggs into like too many channels, too many baskets, then that probably just leads to burnout. And that was also one of everybody's number one concerns, because each additional channel means more work. Separate marketing, different record keeping, different order management, different harvesting, perhaps even different flowers. So I think the key is here to be selective about channels. Start with one, add a second, and then really think about it before you add a third. And maybe today's discussion of channels will help us all kind of think about what channels are right for us. There's no right and wrong channels. It's just all a match for you. So without further ado about that, I'm going to start with wholesale to designers. Now I've separated out, and this is just sort of a learning that's coming to me, wholesale to designers and wholesale to flower shops, bricks and mortar florists, because I've started selling to bricks and mortar florists now, and I think it's quite different than selling to designers. So I'm almost seeing this as two. They're quite close channels, but they're different channels. So I've separated them. Obviously, selling to designers has a lot of advantages. This is, up until this year, this was pretty much my only channel. So you move a lot of flowers. And I love this channel because I love growing things kind of experimentally and trying, different kinds of greenery and different kinds of stems. And so working with designers is like perfect because they are also experimental and avant-garde and like to try different things. But it has some big challenges. Might not be the place to start if you're new. One of the challenges I know farmers here find is being able to predict what's available down the road and how much of it. And in this channel, I would say 60% of my sales were pre-orders, pre-bookings, where a designer said, you know, I have an event August 2nd. Can I reserve? And so that, I think for a lot of flower farmers who are newer, that makes you really nervous, right? Like to commit to something that far ahead. The reason I left this channel, you really have to deliver. I don't mean just deliver the flowers, but I mean physically get them to the designers. And I hired a company to do that. It was challenging in just all kinds of ways. When I did it myself, it was okay, but when I hired someone, I didn't like how they handled my flowers all the time. And I could not do it myself. It's just a big time commitment of driving. So the other reason I left is this required constant communication with those designers. Like they're big buyers, but they're high need. So on a picking day, I would be constantly on the phone with, you know, okay, the yarrow isn't really terracotta anymore. It's kind of turned to mustard. Do you still want it? No. Okay, what do we have instead? What could I substitute? And all about palettes and colors, stem lengths. And I just found that so tiresome as I was trying to get through the harvest to do all of that. So I've kind of moved out of this channel. But let's turn to the co-hosts. And here, have any of you experimented a lot with wholesale to designers, and what has been your learnings?
If I can start.
Yes, please. Sorry, jump in.
Lots of phone calls, and you need to send pictures. And yes, you have to be very precise on what you got and the color. And that's the thing, the colors. Definition of let's say, raspberry red for someone and a raspberry red for a designer. It's very different sometimes.
Yeah, it's true.
So
it's true.
That's been
yeah,
a
just
problem.
like,
And
yeah, what is blush? What do you mean when you say blush? How pink is blush? You know? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so you have to send a lot of pictures, and it's time consuming. So it's really got to be, you have to ask a higher price to a designer than you would to a florist that just takes whatever you're bringing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about wholesale to flower shops then, because it's quite similar. You're still going through a lot of volume of flowers. What I found the challenge here is I think the prices are lower than selling to a designer. For those reasons we said, designer prices tend to be higher. Bricks and mortar shops, they are just so squished by big box stores. They are finding it so hard to survive. And so they really need to pay attention to prices. Even florists who love the idea of buying from us, they still have to say, just even if it's 5 cents different a stem, maybe, but if you get up to 10 or 15 cents difference between my price and a price they're paying through a distributor for a flower, they just can't do it. They just don't have the room to do that margin. So it's a little bit different, I think. With wholesale shops, I think the trick is to really find that product mix that is stuff they can't get somewhere else, because then they're going to be in for that. I don't know. Do others of you sell to flower shops at all? I have to say it's been new to me this year. And it came about because one of the designers who bought a lot of my flowers last year bought a flower shop. And so she has been on a journey too, along with me, of figuring out how can she work local flowers into what her shop does. And we're both on this learning curve still. We've got a year now under our belt and have learned a lot. And I'm really fortunate because we sit down and debrief all the time. I think by the end of this year, we'll have a formula for what it is that I can supply and make money on, and she can use and make money on. And unless it's that partnership, it's just not going to fly.
I'll chime in for a second here,
Yeah,
Teresa.
please.
Yeah, I was going to say, where I lived, where we were in BC. So for those of you who don't know me, we moved our farm from BC to Nova Scotia, and we were in the Kootenays. And I see you have flower shops are everywhere there. Well, sort of. They are. They're in the small towns, but I found that that's maybe a good opportunity to create like a synergy with some of these people. Depending on the situation, I had a relationship with someone who was a more younger, vivacious person that had like a really fun shop, and for her, local was a selling feature. And it was just difficult to get flowers in there, and there would be times where trucks are late, and she was really happy to have a connection with someone locally because you can be there when other things aren't coming in. And it did take time to build that relationship, but then we were kind of on the same wavelength with, color and design. And so she would be able to send me, text me a couple of photos of, a bridal inspiration photo. And I right away would say, okay, I've got this, here's what I think would work for you. And I think because it was a little bit more limited of what she would easily be able to get, that she was willing to make things work a little bit more. But in a place where there's less shops, you maybe have more opportunity to connect with somebody that way. And if you feel like you can build that relationship, it was really nice where she'd say, yep, great. Like send me 2 buckets of 10 stems each of whatever you want mixed that works with this color palette. And she knew that we kind of saw things similarly. And it became a really nice, great relationship. It wasn't, thousands of dollars a week, but it was a nice steady. Every time I go to town, I'll bring some flowers for you. And we were great promoters of each other too.
It really is about a relationship, isn't it? For the florists, really strong relationships. Were you going
I
to
just
say
want to
something?
say one more thing about those channels is too that they are very similar type channels, but they can kind of work together because those event designers may not have an event every single weekend. So that's where your event designers will take a whole bunch of flowers for one wedding, but maybe they only have 2 weddings booked in July or something. So then you have to then figure out where else you're going to sell those flowers for the rest of the month. So that's where working with event designers and actual floral shops, it works together.
Yeah. And to think through in your business planning what you're likely to sell. This designer who's working with me, who bought the florist shop, she's committed to 6 buckets a week. And I have to say that's the most I've ever had a designer or a flower shop commit to. 6 buckets a week. So you can do the math. Is that going to pay your costs, 6 buckets a week? Probably not. So then you're looking at multiple channels, right?
Or different florists.
Or
You
multiple
work with
florists.
more than one florist. And if I can add something about the selling to flower shops, is it's not recommended. Like I read from in different books and heard from different people that they don't recommend you to grow like more than 40 different type of flowers. But if you want to work with flower shop, the and you only have like 40 different flowers throughout your season, then you may have only like 5 or 10 different flowers at all time. That's why they're not gonna buy like maybe more than 30 dahlias or 30 zinnias. But if you have a big selection of flowers, they may buy like a bunch or two from everything you got, and then it's worth it.
Yeah. It's really finding the product mix for sure. A lot of work to find the product mix for your designers, and they'll all be a little bit different. Let's move on. So, small stores, or what sometimes people call permanent farmers markets. I don't do this at all, but I know some of you do, and I know Janice, and I know that Sarah does, I think. So, Janice, why don't you jump in first?
Sure. With this one, we have local farm stand markets that are other farmers that grow vegetables, and that they have a permanent market that's open through the season. So then we take bouquets to them. Usually every other day. They're not far from us, so it's easy for us to get to them quickly. And if they need a couple buckets for that day, then we take them to them. We sell them outright, so they pay us when we drop them off. So it's a lower price that we get for them because we're selling them wholesale, and then they mark them up. It can be really great because at Mother's Day, they usually order 50 to 80 buckets of flowers. So there's 5 bouquets in a bucket. And at Thanksgiving, we did 100 buckets to them this past Thanksgiving over the Thursday to Sunday or Monday. So you have to have the volume for this and a recipe, and it has to be quick. These are not like really crazy designed. They're put together. They are a recipe. Think of them, unfortunately, like fast food. They have a recipe of you put one of this, one of this, one of this, one of this, put it together, put elastic on, in the pail, sleeve, go, kind of thing. So it's a very quick thing. We can get it down to like, usually we can make 15 bouquets in like 12 minutes or something like that when we get going on them. So you can be really fast on them, and you have to be fast to be able to make it worthwhile.
I totally agree with you there, Janice. Yeah, and we found that to be similar. We sold to a small like local grocery chain, so they had a couple of different locations. And yeah, you had to have the volume and again build those relationships. And we had a relationship with the owner to where he would actually text me a picture of what they had left from the previous day. And so he actually put it in our hands to decide what we thought was the right amount to bring in, which worked out really good because he would have a really big sales day and go, "Oh my God, I need 50 more bouquets like tomorrow morning." And then I'd say, "Well, I wonder if, there was a holiday or there was something going on. All those people just bought flowers." He would want 50, and then, okay, well, now today only 20 sold. And, just kind of keeping an eye on, well, I think, Teresa, you have on there, your flowers are out of your hands at that point, and now you're putting your trust in these other people. Your name is attached to that. So we ended up creating a strict policy of like, no, after this many days, like they're gone. And we just started coming and picking them up if there was anything left over. But once we got into the cycle of being able to sort of predict for ourselves what kind of inventory they should have, it worked out really great. And it was a great relationship because we could move a lot of product through there. And we found stuff like the bunches of sunflowers, the straight bunches of dahlias, like those sold super well. Zinnias with just like a little pop of some green in there were great. And like Janice was saying, you could make them really quickly and get them in for a good price point for people because they are at a grocery store. So it's, they're not usually wanting that really super special occasion kind of bouquet. So for us, it worked really well. We did deal with some other local smaller shops, and that was much more tricky because they wanted a smaller volume, and you have that same problem with just fluctuating demand. So trying to figure that out and then figuring, is this worth your time, especially if you don't see room for growth in that particular spot. If they're only going to sell 5 a day or something, it's unless it's right next door to you, it's hard to make something like that work. So yeah, for us it was a great channel, but having that quick bouquet and the volume to meet their demand, because if they need to have flowers in their store, and in our case they would order from a wholesaler otherwise. So if we didn't have enough to produce, then he was left without any flowers in his shop, and customers are getting upset. So you really had to be sure you were going to make that commitment and follow through.
If people have some questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I'm going to go on, but put the questions in the chat, and I'm going to come back and we'll handle a few after this next channel, which is farm stands. So I think this is typical. A lot of us have farm stands in addition to whatever else because it's the easiest place to start. And some are with service, some are self-serve. Very flexible, very scalable, because you can do as much or as little as you wish, and you can control the timing. I think there are some challenges though, like good signage is important. You need a site that has good access to where you're putting the stand. I started this for the first time last year, and I had to put up this tent and redesign my driveway, which is going to be super duper and better next year. But it had to be easy for people to get to. They couldn't have to wander down paths and around the back and all of this. And I found it needed surprisingly a lot of promotion. I'm on a very busy road, and I thought the road itself would be a lot of promotion, but it still didn't seem to be enough. I still feel like I need to promote it a lot more. I didn't have a theft problem. Some people say they do, but I certainly did have problems with flowers not lasting in the heat, even though they were under a tent. Like I would have to freshen them. Usually 2 or 3 times on a Saturday, I would take fresh flowers out and take wilted ones away. Let's hear how others of you are managing your farm stands. Janice, I know you have one.
Yeah, we have our flower cart is open at the end of our laneway. It's on Saturday mornings, which is kind of funny because it runs at the same time as our farmers market, and the farmers market is not very far away. But we do have different customers that come to our farm stand that don't necessarily go into the market. The flower cart is open a set time from 9 until 1. So within that time, we usually didn't have too much problem with flowers having problems, but they are under a tent. We did have to change our laneway as well because we are on quite a busy road. So we made a turn off onto our laneway into the field where people can circle around so that they're not parking on the busy road.
Other thoughts?
We had this as a picture from our farm stand in BC, and we're in the process of building one here in Nova Scotia because we did enjoy that sales outlet so much. Oops. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm kind of frozen on my screen. So, for us, I found definitely having the parking, having signage, more signage than you think you would possibly need everywhere because people just get confused. And also, I think it makes people feel really comfortable depending on what your scenario is there, that they're like, am I at the right place? It's like, yes, it's obvious you're at the right place. Park here, great. People don't worry about where should I park. I think little things like that that might not seem as important really make the experience a little bit better for people. And we started off with a self-serve, and we actually we sort of redesigned our studio and shop. So we were working adjacent to the shop. So we ended up sort of having it staffed. And that really did make a difference for us because we had flowers right there, and we would, I hate to say it, but it was kind of like, well, do you want fries with that? Like, and it really worked. People really liked it, and you didn't feel very salesy. You were just like, oh my God, look what we just brought in from the field. And people were, oh, that's amazing. You just cut these? Like, wow, I want to have some. And for us, like, we made our stand really cute, I think. And it became a bit of a draw for people in the area. And this picture here was some of my favorite customers. And that was Tanya and her daughter. And they would like get dressed up, and you can see her friend has like a little crown on. And so they were like, we're going to make a little trip and we're going to get dressed up and we're going to go to the farm stand and pick out flowers. And it became something that was like special for people. And we had a little bench outside next to it. I had like a giant wreath that I'd made even for the summer outside. And so people would buy their flowers and sit their kids down on the bench and take photos. And of course, share those on social media. And that for us really helped get the word out. I think that was just as valuable as anything else on getting stuff on Instagram or whatever, is just that word of mouth. And we were open. I see Kathy just asked a question there. We were actually open Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays we played around. We were open a little bit more, a little bit less, but we ended up doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 9 to 6 actually. So it would be we'd open up and people would start coming in and we'd have a fairly steady stream of people all day long. So, people then got into the habit of it and they knew when we were open. And I think there's a temptation that people sometimes want to be open all the time. But I feel like it's better to concentrate your business down on fewer days. For us, it worked because we always had people in that space at that time. I don't know that I would need to be open 3 days a week necessarily, but it happened to work for us. So, I think it's a great way to go. Other than, you have those challenges there. For us, it was like in our yard. People were
Well,
there
that's
all
the
the
thing.
time. We ended up putting in a gate because we just had people coming up all the time, even when we're closed. And, you have signage, but people are like, oh, well, geez, I just, a flower emergency. So, but putting up the gate, that stops that problem pretty quick. But you do have to be ready to share your space with people, especially if it's that close to your house. And I'd say that was probably the biggest drawback. And maybe people kind of seeing things out in the field and sort of wanting things they maybe couldn't have, or wanting to then start like, can we wander? Can we pick? Can we, which of course might open up other doors for other ideas. But
Yeah. I
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was a great way to be part of the community too.
Go ahead, Janice.
I was just gonna say ours is just open 9 till 1 now. And when we originally had the flower cart, it was open, like kind of like whatever time, dusk till dawn kind of thing, and it was a self-serve at that point. That was years ago. But then we changed that through COVID, and now it's just open on Saturdays. We do allow on Saturdays. Well, the flower cart is open in August for people to walk through the field and see. So it's kind of because the fields are right there beside the flower cart that they can then walk around and see with that as well. So
I started off opening noon till 5 on Friday, and then 9 to 5 on Saturday, and everybody got confused about that. So that was silly. Like, it just was easier to do it 2 days, full days. But I want to echo the comment about I set it up as self-serve, and I take payment by cash or by bank transfer, and the instructions are all right there. It's a pretty big tent, like it was a 12 by 20 tent, so it's a big space. People can walk in, there's even a chair in there. It's good to have a chair, someone, with an elderly parent along, they like to sit. But what I found was I started just working kind of in that area, close to the area in the front yard on those times. And so I could just pop over, and it made such a difference. Like, for one thing, it secured comeback customers, because then they start to come back and they want to chat with you. And if you're not there, they'll mention the next time, oh, I didn't see you on last Saturday when I was here. I wanted to ask, So I have found that, and I'll do this next year, plan my self-serve stand that I'm close by, and then I hang in. And Sarah's completely right. I started in mid-season when I would see there's a couple of cars in the driveway. I'd walk to the stand with a couple of buckets of flowers, and people are just so excited. They just come into the field and they feel that they caught something. They caught an opportunity here because, they didn't see that before. So I'm a little dissuade away from the totally self-serve approach to something that is a little bit more interactive. I just found it made a huge difference. I'm going to go on because, I think farmers markets is another really popular channel that many of us sell in. I have to say I don't do this either. Talk about channels we leave behind. For me, I love being at the market. I love talking to people at the market, but the packing for and setting up and disassembly and tearing down, I just have no more patience for that. So that's why I quit this channel. That, and at the markets I had the opportunity to go to, there were always other flower farmers there, and always with really cheap bunches. And so I didn't really see in my immediate area a huge opportunity with farmers markets. But I know other people are different. So let's hear from other co-hosts about farmers markets. Janice, I know you do them.
Sure. Okay, I didn't know if Sarah wanted to go first because it's Sarah's picture.
Oh,
But no, we've been at our farmers market since the beginning. So this is our 17th year at this farmers market.
wow.
It was one that my parents sold vegetables at as well. So we do have that kind of nostalgia in the community, and we're known in the community for that. Farmers markets over the years, at one point we were doing 3 farmers markets on a Saturday morning. That was pretty crazy. I had to have staff that would meet me at one of the markets. I'd set up and then I'd go to the next one, or my husband would load up the trailer, go to one market, and then the other one started an hour later, so we'd go to that market after. So it was really hard to divide ourselves. So that's why we've always gone back to our main market in our town, which we're only like 5 kilometers or something from the market in St. Thomas. It's really close. So it's another volume one. It's consistency. You have to have the thing about farmers markets, and it's in vegetables, they always say pile it high and watch it fly. So you have to have lots of stuff. You have to have a full table. You have to have lots to offer. And it's more of those, like in the picture here, those bright, colorful flowers, those really eye-catching flowers that are fragrant as well. So they smell. If you put basil or mint in your bouquet, make sure you walk around and like jiggle your bouquets around a little bit so you start to smell and have people come over. So I guess I'm not really doing very good on the challenges part of farmers markets, but the challenges is definitely Saturday mornings. You have to commit to that. And you have to be there every week. Like you can't be I'll be here this week and not next week. You can't move spots around. We've had the same table since the very beginning because that's where people know where we're going to be. If they see something set up there, they know that we're there. So that's really important too with farmers markets. But yeah, it's a good way to get in and to be part of it, and that's how we started and are still continuing with that part.
Valerie, do you do a farmers market at all?
I do, and I would say it's very good for a flower.
Oh, I think you got muted there, Valerie. Could you unmute?
Okay, I don't know, it mutes itself. I don't know. Yeah, it's good when you're just starting to get yourself known in the community. And you sell what you got. So it's not like a commitment, like for weddings, you gotta have what you promised, or for a subscription, you gotta have flour every week. You promised, but yeah, farmers market, you bring what you got. So it's good when you're starting.
I think farmers markets are a great way when you're starting out to get your name out there. If it's
Exactly.
a local market in your community. I know when I sold vegetables, that was how I built my vegetable subscription program, was going to farmers market and signing people up there. And I think it would be similar for flowers. I think you'd be able to do that.
One thing that is good to do at the farmers market, it's to have a piece of paper where people can write their email. So you start like a email list for like when to sell whatever else you got. Like if you have a bulb sale when you start your subscription. So if the next year you don't do the the farmers market, but you want to get in touch with these people that you met, then you can start there your email list.
Yeah. Kathy makes a good point here around you've got to have something early in the season at farmers markets. People start going out to farmers markets early and they expect vendors to have stuff, and you get a reputation. You get your regulars who keep coming then. She also mentions promoting workshops and other things as well. I think all of those are great suggestions. Remember to
Our market as well has now opened year round. So it is one that's going all the time. So we had flowers up until Christmas, and we are taking a break now until our forced tulips will be on in late February. But if you were forcing and had tulips earlier, you could be at the market now if your market is open year round. And I'm pretty sure there are ones that would be year round. So that is an option as well.
I think if I was doing farmers markets, I'd also make sure that I have some dried offerings or even some bulbs or even seedlings in the spring if my product mix was kind of low. Because people want to buy something. And I always found with vegetables, like I was lucky I had asparagus. I had an early crop for vegetable sales. But people were like hungrier to buy something early in the season, it seemed like, Everybody comes out of that winter. Okay, Julie asks, how to find a good farmer's market? I have to say, I never looked around for them. I just looked at the ones that were in my area. I've heard other people say they would look for one that didn't have a lot of flower vendors already.
It's hard to know too, because there's markets we've done that you think it's going to be great, and you're like, okay, this location is good. There's a really young, affluent kind of community. This is going to be great. But then it doesn't work out. So we've had those kind of markets as well. We had a market that we did in a bigger city near us, and they had a Saturday morning market and they had a Thursday market. So we, at that point, we're doing both of them. Well, Thursday, people would come, and all the bakers first thing in the morning were selling all the croissants and everything, and you're going to work, so I'm going to buy a croissant on my way to work, and then there'd be nobody until the 10:30 break, and then all these people would come and they'd buy some vegetables and buy some things, but they wouldn't necessarily buy flowers because they're going back to the office. And then it got busy again at lunchtime. So we found that even though it was a market that did well on Saturday, it didn't do well on Thursday in that same place. So it's really, there's trial and error. And I think it's really important that the farmers market, the manager, because it's their job, like, to make that market good and make it busy. Like, you're paying your stall fees to be there, so you're paying them to get the customers there. So it's their job to make that a good market for you. And if it's not, they need to know that, and they need to know that they aren't doing their job at that farmers market.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I've found tricky over the years is that it does really vary with like the quality of the management. And so when you find a good one, it's like, holy cow, this person really can make a difference in how much they're getting the word out about the market and just how long the market's been going on for. But we found them to be a great way to get our name into the community. And I think like Kathy there had some excellent points about like just showing up and being consistent and using the market, not just like obviously you're there to sell your flowers, but to connect with your community and to get them on board with like what are the other things that you're offering. And maybe if you have a farm stand or you do a U-pick, it's a great way to send people to those other things that you do that potentially, might even be more profitable than the farmer's market. But for us moving to Nova Scotia, being in a new place, it's been a great way to get to know people in our community. And
oh, sorry.
yeah, no, that we're hoping to do a farm stand and do some other things here. And we had actually quit doing the market in BC because our farm stand was kind of taking the place of that. But here it's been such a good way to connect with people in the community. And, of the other vendors, the farming community, as well as like the community at large. So I think showing up and being consistent, though, is just so important at a market. Like Jana said, you move one stall over, people are like, you weren't there last week. And it's like, I was literally 5 feet away from where I was last week.
Kathy mentions to talk to the other vendors if you're looking for other markets, because often vendors sell in multiple markets. And I just want to say, don't eat too many donuts, because this was my problem. I was always next to this lovely Mennonite baker lady who came with fresh donuts every Saturday morning. And of course, I hadn't had breakfast because I was setting up the market. And I ate way too many donuts. It still shows. Okay, subscriptions. So another channel that many people jump into. This is one I tried early on and left early on, deciding it's not for me. And I decided it's not for me for two specific reasons. I couldn't deliver everything. And I mean, again, the physical delivery, I don't mean deliver on flowers. That's never been my problem. But delivering the bouquets was. And I got so annoyed with people not showing up to pick up their bouquets at the appointed time. And then do I leave it out? Do I put it in a cooler? So for me, this involved a lot of communication, and maybe I just hadn't set it up right. So I'm anxious to hear other people who do subscription programs and they work for you. What can you tell us about that?
I'll start because we do a big subscription. There's been different ways that we've done the subscription as well. So I think this is about our 7th or 8th year doing flower subscriptions. We do a monthly subscription, so they get 5 bouquets through the season. We at different times did bi-weekly, and we tried different ways and do it this way, and it is a logistical nightmare. So trying to figure out all of the ways to do that, you have to streamline it. With ours, we don't allow people to change the dates. Sometimes I cave and they'll call me and I'll do it, but in their information that they get when they get the subscription, it's all laid out there. So it's not changing around dates. We do it that it's the same day every month. So if you're like the 3rd Wednesday of the month, that's when your subscription comes. We do 210 subscriptions in the season from May until September, so they are divided out then throughout the season. We do deliver them as well. There are pickups available, but the majority of our subscriptions are delivered. So then we spend time figuring out the routes. So it's divided into 7 routes. And then there's also pickup days that they pick up at the farm. So all of that information is given to them when they get them. A lot of our subscriptions are purchased as gifts. So we do a huge push on them before Christmas. And I think we're probably over 75% sold out on them. I like to keep some of them still for now because people still do like to trickle in and buy them, or people who haven't heard about them are like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing idea. I need one. Yeah, sorry, you can't get them until next year. So we do like to still have some of them available. I'd like to have some for, usually I cut off by April, just so that we have time to figure out and get them in their routes. But yeah, they are delivered. We have a delivery person. That is his job. He comes and delivers the wholesale orders and other orders, our online orders, and also the subscriptions. So that's really good that way. But it's a great income. So the first opportunity on it is an off-season cash flow. So we don't have very many flowers blooming right now. I do have some, but that money that we got in November and December from those subscriptions is able to carry me through until we start having more available again. So it's our way to get through the winter.
Other comments on subscriptions? It's a great thing
I
if
think
you can make
Janice
it
said it
work.
all.
Yeah, I think Janice hit the nail on the head with
Yep.
I find people want to offer too many things and multiple locations and bi-weekly and weekly and then different sizes of bouquets, and by the time you break that all out, you're looking at, wow, theoretically you have like 12 different products that you're offering people. And not only is it confusing for you, but I think people like things to be simple, so you show up, especially if you're buying it for a gift, you don't want that like bar that they can't cross, that they're like, oh gosh, I don't know, like would she like it Wednesdays at this place or the full or the half. Like, simplify it down and I think you will sell more. And we did more of a drop point kind of a thing. I think if you can deliver it, that's great. Like, you never have to worry about someone like not picking up their bouquet. And asking other flower farmers, I found that was their biggest thing, is the communication. But we made it really straightforward of like, this is exactly what you're getting, and this is what you can expect from us, and this is what we expect from you. I want you right now to like stop what you're doing and put this in your calendar. So you get a reminder every other week or every week when you get your subscription. And we had 225 people, and it was rare that we really had an issue with it. Once we got that first week or 2 weeks, because we did an every other week option, once we got through that, it was I won't say it was smooth sailing all the time. Things come up, but for the most part, it was pretty smooth. And we had a couple businesses that we worked with that were super great partners to work with. And we just dropped them off there, and we had a list of everybody's names, and the lovely people at the shop would check off the names for us, which that was, that's a lot to ask of them, but we gave them flowers in return, and, we helped each other cross promote, and that worked out really good for us. So we just had like 2 or 3 stops to make. We could leave the farm super early in the morning, and you're back like within an hour, hour and a half, and have everything dropped off. And it was a great success, and it was very much a word of mouth. Once people saw their friend getting those flowers, and that maybe their partner had bought that for them for Christmas or their birthday, that word travels fast that way.
Yeah. Talk for a minute about pickup. Sue is asking if you have to deliver or can you do pickup? How does it work with pickup?
With us, they pick up at the farm, and it's the same day. Like, they know what their dates are at the beginning, and they can pick up after 10 o'clock. And it's usually just in the cooler with their name or with a sheet, and then they just mark off. So if they come after 4 o'clock when my help is gone, then they know after the first time. Once they come, we show them they'll be in the cooler right here, and then they just check their name off and go. So it's pretty easy that way. But there is times where you have to remind them for picking up, whereas like what we said about delivering, you don't have to remind them. Yeah, they're people, they usually, once they've got one, you forgot to pick up your bouquet yesterday, they feel pretty sheepish about it, and they're usually there from then on.
We had the same system where we just had a checklist with everybody's name on it, and you use spreadsheets or your friend, and have that printed off and ready to go. And yeah, we had a rule that like we had a pretty big pickup window, so if you hadn't picked up by the end of the day, if it was on the farm, you could come and pick it up the next day. If it was at one of the other locations, we said we would gift it to one of the staff members, and yeah, it was very rare that we had a problem.
We're going to move on to bouquet bars and pop-ups. And so by a bouquet bar, it might be on your farm, or it might be in a different location. It might be spontaneous, like a couple times a season, or it might be all the time. This is a picture of my bouquet bar, so you get a sense of the tent that I had set up last year there. I loved it. I loved having the bouquet bar. It was super easy to do. This is me hating design and arrangement though. And so I would sometimes I would color block, sometimes I would variety block, put all the flowers out in buckets, not fancy buckets. I just used florist buckets. And I had, you see the wrap there and elastics and tape and pruners, and people would pull a bouquet together. And I tried all different things for pricing, but I settled on $25 a bouquet, up to 15 stems. And that worked very well. I want to echo what other people have said, and I think this applies to lots of channels. Keep it simple, sweetie. Like when you start getting into the multiple sizes and the counting by stems and the pricing by stems, people had to do the math. They had to say, oh, let's see, a tulip is worth $2.50 and a pussy willow, oh, what was that worth? Like they're not going to do it. They're chatting with people while they do it. They're relaxed. They just, and then I'll interrupt someone and they'll say, oh, I lost count. And I'll say, don't worry about it. Like, it has to be a very quick thing for people to do, and a very relaxing thing for people to do in order for them to come back. But I'm totally sold on Bouquet Bar as a channel, and I'll definitely do it again. And I would say to people, if you don't have a place that would work for Pick Your Own, this is the experience to give people. Like, let them do things with the flowers. And I think that's a whole different perhaps group of customers who they don't want to just grab and go. They actually want to linger a little bit. Maybe they've got children with them, maybe a mother with them, or something like that. Do other people have experience with bouquet bars, either on farm or pop-ups in other places? I know I would like to do pop-ups in other places as well, where you kind of go for the afternoon and set up a bouquet there. But finding the locations is a bit of a conundrum, how you do that. But yes, I liked the bouquet bar idea a lot. Now we're on to some agritourism things. Again, more with this idea of giving people experiences. And so pick your own being one. It seems like it's quite a hot channel right now. Judging from, I've been revamping how I'm going to do my pick your own for next year. And so I just was doing a whole bunch of searching of other Canadian flower farms doing pick your owns. And I was amazed at how many there are. So I think more and more people are doing this. I love it. Again, there's no time spent in design for me. But there are some challenges, I would say. Risk and insurance are big ones. And I know not everybody's worried about that. I stopped this for the current year, like for 2024, I did not offer pick your own because in 2023, I spent so many sleepless nights worried that some child would trip over a hose and lose an eye on one of my, posts that's holding up netting or something. And I really couldn't get past it. It just stuck with me. So I've revamped my insurance. I've added insurance, and talked to a lawyer about risk and risk management. And so I'm back into pick your own. And I think as I retire, this is going to be my number one channel. I'm gradually going to sunset other channels. And this is me. And that's just because I'm getting older. And I think my new, up until now, I haven't really wanted to be out there with customers talking to them. I've been too distracted. But now I'm like recreating myself. I'm going to be this old grandma lady who has a garden person. I can just see it. It's my new image. And so then the old grandma lady likes to come out and talks to people while they're picking flowers. What nicer way to go. So for me, this is like the perfect retirement thing. But other people do pick your own who are not retiring. And it's a pretty significant channel for them. Does anyone else on the group here do pick your own or done pick your own?
We only did it in two specific instances, because the first one was, it was mid to late June, and I'd been picking peonies 4 times a day for like 2 weeks, and it was like, I finally realized at 2:00 in the afternoon, oh my gosh, I didn't pick the peonies at lunchtime or whatever. And we were close to the end of the season, and I went out there and there was blooms everywhere. And I was like, wow, that was ruined, and that was a stupid mistake on my part. So then I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to make lemonade out of this. So I posted on my Facebook page that people could come and pick peonies, and it was $1 a stem that night because they were blown out and bloomed. We had so many people, and it ended up being like $600 or $700. The field was totally cleaned, which it would have been anyways in the next day or so. So we were out of the field, people were still coming. So I finally was like, okay, let's start taking some out of the cooler for the last few people that had made the drive out. The other time we did it was the day before we had our last frost in the dahlia field. And I knew, okay, it was a Saturday. I'm done my markets. There wasn't any more weddings coming up, and the field was still in bloom. There was lots of dahlias still to go. So again, I posted it up on my Facebook page. I went off to a wedding show and left my husband and kids at home. And I got a phone call at 2:00 in the afternoon. He's like, what did you do? There is 30 cars here. We're running out of buckets, and we don't have any clippers. So when I came home, there were still people there. The field was pretty much picked clean, which it was going to be black and frozen the next day anyways. We charged $30 for a bucket of flowers. People were picking weeds. They were picking anything they possibly could. I knew it was going to be frozen the next day. So it was we ended up 100 buckets for $30 each. So it was a $3,000 afternoon that would have been frozen and black the next day. So really thinking about that opportunity where it's okay, I need to do something with this. I'd rather have somebody take it and enjoy it. And people were still talking. They were like, when are you going to do this again? And I was next year when this happens again? So, anyways, it's just a way to think about it that you don't necessarily always have to like. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like there is opportunity to make a feel good and make lemonade out of your flowers when it's a
Totally.
situation like that.
The thing I have always found about pick your own is you have to be prepared to really let go of a lot of things here, right? I mean, people are wandering around your property, and yes, things get wrecked, and either accidentally or deliberately. And even though you have all these rules posted, people show up with their dog, and you have to say to them, you can't go through the field with the dog, right? You have to have a place to tie the dog in the shade then, because and even though you say on your website there is no access to a washroom, there's the 8-month pregnant woman who really has to go. And what are you going to say to her? So you do kind of need to have access to a washroom. And visitors really feel quite entitled to wander around. I always tried to rope off certain areas. I'm going to abandon that because, then people are just like they're sneaking underneath barriers and they're going to areas where you didn't think they were going to go. So there is this aspect to it. But for me, I've come to my peace with pick your own. The one thing I would say, I'll share a little story. So in 2023, this would have been, my property has a pretty large front yard, and there's a lot of flowers in the front yard. And you park near the front yard, and then you walk to the fields, which is, I don't know, 50 feet or something, but it's over a hill. You can't really see the fields from the parking. So I escort people over there and give them a little 411 and off they go. So this couple arrives, and you can tell right away if it's people not used to a flower farm, like she's wearing heels, and I think, okay, wasn't really clear where they were going. So I come to her with the bucket and the cutters, and she looks at me, she's in a couple, and she looks at me and says, this really isn't what we were expecting. And because they all pay in advance, right? And so right away I thought, oh. And I said, sorry. And I realized she hasn't seen the flower field yet. She's just looking at my front yard. So I said, no, this is my front yard. Come with me. And we go to the top of the hill, and she just goes, oh, wow. And it made me think, you see, if you don't have the wow factor, if you can't get the wow, I think that's the critical part for pick your own. They got to say wow. If they don't say wow, find another channel. I'm just going back to a question about my bouquet bar. I just can't find it. Who was asking? Someone was asking. Oh, Kathy was asking, did I get people just taking 15 of the good stems? Maybe. I don't know. I didn't keep track of what stems went and what stems didn't. I just kept filling up buckets, and at the end of the day, what was left was put on the compost pile. So I didn't really ever run out of things because I always refresh my buckets. There's other agritourism things too that are, I think, becoming more and more popular. Open houses, festivals, workshops, dinners in the garden with flowers, farm tours, lots of things. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here if you've got the right setting. People who are doing photography, booking of private events. In 2025, I am going to allow private pick your own bookings, but I don't really do many of these other things. But it's a great way to add high value to those stems, like almost as good as weddings, which we're going to get to next. But a lot of value add in this, not because of the design skill, but because of the customer experience. You can charge more. Are there other people in our group here who are doing these kinds of agritourism events or thinking about it? You need the right setup. You need the right infrastructure. You need the right marketing. You need to when I was a vegetable farmer, we occasionally would hold dinners in the garden because we had a inspected food premise on the farm, which is now my flower packing shed. And that was great. But I haven't done anything like that with flowers. Okay, so people are wowed by a field full of flowers. Absolutely they are. Yes, pick your own. It seems to be an easy way. People are commenting. Kate, if you've got questions, this would be a good time around Pick Your Own to post them. We're going to go on and talk about designed weddings, because probably there's no, unless it's one of these experiential things, for sure you're adding a lot of value to your STEM cost here with a designed wedding. This isn't something I've done. There was one season, which turned out to be COVID season, where I partnered with a designer to do these events, some weddings and events, which just meant a whole lot of rescheduling of weddings and events. So I kind of didn't do so well with that. But Janice, I know this is a big channel for you and maybe for others too. Do you want to comment? And Valerie, I think maybe you do as well. But Janice, why don't you give a start?
Sure. Yeah, we do a lot of weddings. We get in flowers as well to go with our flowers that we grow. So some of the things, there are parts of the bouquets that it's easier for me to buy certain things of them, but the majority of the flowers are ours. It is a lot of work with them. So yes, it is a high value to it, but I'm talking to brides and couples now this time of year, and then I'm like hooked with them until their wedding kind of thing. So there is a lot of talking. There's a lot of email back and forth. I am pretty tough about that there are boundaries, so I'm not talking to them like every week, and I'm not talking to them multiple times. They, after a while, once you've done it for a while, people start to get to know your style and know what to expect from you. So I do the type of weddings that I can do, so I'm honest about what types of weddings I take on. We do, with my team, do multiple weddings in a weekend, so it can get really busy. We do a la carte weddings where they will order a bouquet and boutonniere and bridesmaids and that. Some of those are on our website, thanks to COVID and that, where people were doing lots of elopements and that. We had people who order bouquets right on the website. With those, I don't talk to them at all. They pay for their bouquet. They maybe send me an inspiration picture, but really it's not one that I talk to them about. The ones where we're designing for their tables and centerpieces and arbors and all that kind of stuff, I will do a Zoom meeting or a in-person meeting with them to plan things out. So there's a lot of time in that, with meeting with them and then doing their quotes and then growing for their wedding as well. Another neat one, if you want to get into a little bit of weddings, are micro weddings, which have started up since COVID and that. We have a venue in town that they do micro weddings. So the people, there's a photographer there, a hairdresser, makeup, an officiant, and we do the flowers. And basically the couple shows up with their 50 guests. They can add on food if they want. They can do all that. They have the space for a couple hours or whatever they pay for, and they don't have say on what their flowers look like. They get lots of inspiration pictures. They can tell me a color, but I'm not meeting with them or anything like that. The bouquet is just, they show up and this is their bouquet for the day. So there's plus and minuses to weddings too, and Valerie can say some things too if she wants of them, but
you said it. It's all it's all about boundaries and be prepared for a lot of communication. And but yes, you have to be clear on the steps of the process and what you can and can't do. What I have to say about that too is, but it's fun when you love to talk, meet people. It's great. It's really fun to hear their inspiration and what they want for the team and the color, and see what you can do with what they want and make their dream day come true with your flowers.
And showing them their
something magical about it.
Yeah, showing them their bouquet on the day of their wedding and they start crying, or this is exactly what I wanted, even though I didn't know what I wanted. So it's really rewarding, and it is good. If you love it and you love doing it, then it is great. If that makes you want to like throw up thinking about a wedding and that, then maybe don't do that. But
Don't do that. Yes, exactly. But it's fun when they show you like an inspiration for their bouquet and you have the flowers. It's yes, they're gonna be happy.
Yes.
And yeah, it's fun. And also, like you said, Teresa, it's the highest value you can get for your flower because of the whole process and the high communication and all that. You can really make like a time for the price you would sell
I
the
have
florist.
a question for you. When you started out and you didn't have like a reputation yet, um, how did you develop that competence in making bridal bouquets? Because it's a unique thing. It's not like making a farm button.
Practicing,
Yeah.
yeah, practicing, just
Practice.
making bridal bouquet for fun, for yourself, taking pictures,
Yeah.
everything what you want them to ask you, do it just for yourself and take pictures. And
Yeah.
if one bride ask you for, yes, that's the style I want to do, maybe add a little more, takes a lot of pictures. And that's what the next bride will ask you probably. Yeah,
Yeah. The best compliment is
gotta have
when
a,
someone brings you inspiration pictures and they're your bouquets.
oh.
I want this one.
And one thing that I love about it, it's just visiting new venue.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun going to new places like
Yeah.
apple orchard that you didn't know and see new settings. It's beautiful.
I
Yeah.
have to say, those of you who do designed weddings, you have my admiration to no end. This is not a channel that is me at all, and so I don't have the patience. I don't have the skill. Uh, I I don't care enough about about their event to really, convey that with any kind of sincerity. So this is not my channel, but I really admire those of you who have it. I think it's a tough channel, time-consuming channel.
Stressful. Stressful. The
Yeah.
day before the wedding, sometimes you think, I hope that the boutonniere is going to hold. Do I forget something? And then you go to bed, but you're still thinking about thousands of things.
Well, you
Maybe I
know,
shouldn't have put that flowers. I'm going to remove it tomorrow. And you have a list that.
this is one of the reasons I cut back selling to event designers. Is that also was stressful? That I'd lay in bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to get those 20 stems of giant hanging amaryllis into the vehicle, and how are they going to fit with this, and where am I going to put them? Or I would be laying there thinking, oh my gosh, she wants 3 buckets of brown Lysianthus. Geez, do I have 3? Why did I say I would have 3? Oh, I'm going to have to scrounge for 3. And I would worry so much about these things. Or it's starting to rain, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 days away from delivering. Do I harvest the things now? Or do I wait till after the rain? Is it going to rain for 2 days and then they're not going to be good? I just they're stressed with many channels, but I think you're right. The designed weddings. I'm just going to pick up answers to a couple of questions. Is there a market for all for native pick your own? I don't do a lot of natives. There are natives on my farm, and people do pick them. But interestingly, in my pick your own retirement plan, I am going to have one whole field that is basically a meadow. It won't just be native flowers, it'll be other flowers that self-seed and bachelor button things like that. And I suspect people will pick that because who doesn't like wandering through a meadow? Do you give customers a jar when they buy from the bouquet bar? I do not. They wrap in an elastic and put them in paper if they want, and take them home. But no, I don't give them a jar. And in the pick your own, I have only ever done pick your own by the full bucket. And I did that because I only have parking for 6 cars. So I wanted to capitalize the highest price that I could. I'm still debating if I'll change that to size offerings or not next year. Because a lot of people will offer a pick your own jar as the container. So for me, because I can't do the design wedding, I do this quite a bit, the do it yourself wedding bucket. So this is a mixed bucket of flowers. Again, I have people who pre-buy, they pre-order, and I keep it really simple. I'll have a online shop set up where they pre-buy and they can choose one of 3 palettes, a white blush palette or a vibrant, and then maybe a cools and pastels, and then maybe a warm tones or something like that, for 4 different palettes. And I leave it in place for the whole season, which for me works because I know that I have those flowers for the whole season. And they buy as many buckets as they want for that date, and they come pick them up. I like this channel because it's another wow factor channel. When people come and see a whole bouquet of flowers, a whole bucket of flowers, which, think of it, people don't usually see flowers en masse like that. Just like people don't usually see a bridal bouquet, and it's quite a breathtaking thing for them. It's an experience just to even see the bucket, and they always say wow. And if they don't say wow, I ask them, is something wrong? And let me make it right, because I expect the wow. It's very flexible, and you can scale it. You could sell buckets all season, or you could sell them just in the main season or whatever. But it's really easy to get sucked into that communication. And this was a problem for me for a few years, where, it would start with, how many bouquets does a bucket make? Well, it depends on what your bouquet is. It's not that easy. I can tell you there's 60 stems here. You need to work out the rest. And, or is there going to be this in it? Or I don't want too much of this, and these communications. And people will send me their palettes, and they'll send me fabric swaths from their clothes. And I don't want to go down and inspiration photos galore, and I don't want to go down any of those paths, but I get roped into going down those paths. So last year I stopped that totally by, it's just you buy it in advance, and that's it. But my sales dropped by about 50% when I did that. People were expecting still a little bit of this customization here. And so it's just, a note, if you're thinking of doing this, you've got to decide how much customization you're prepared to put in. I don't know, do others sell do-it-yourself event buckets, bulk flowers?
We would do some and found they were pretty popular, but we were really specific, like you're saying, Teresa, with just being very upfront that it's a grower's choice, farmer's choice, but we would allow them to sort of pick whatever we called it, like bright and bold or soft pastel. And we were really clear, like, we can't guarantee anything. We won't, you cannot choose what is in the bucket. And then we did line out that, we will include like so many focal type flowers. Like, you want to let them know they're not just going to get a whole bucket of, Orlia or something like that. But, okay, we were going to arrange it in this way so that you could make X amount of small mason jar arrangements, or, I felt like you need to give people some sort of a sense of what size your bucket is, so what they know what to expect, because a bucket is not a bucket is not a bucket. Like, they're all going to be different sizes. So give them some idea of what to expect that way. And you make it clear that the pricing is such that this is why you're getting a good deal, because it is a farmer's choice. It's the absolute best of what we have in bloom, try to still play it up that way, but it's grower's choice. And if you want something specific, well, we basically got to where we just didn't offer it, except for dahlias. We would say within this time frame, you can also order dahlias by the stem. They're this much. You can't pick the specific variety, but you can pick the color. And then we just didn't. You just have to say, well, geez, if you want this, may I recommend so and so.
Yes.
Who can give you those specific blush lisianthus of this exact tone and all that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. For 1 year, I did, like, you can do these add-ins, and so you could add in, baby's breath, or you could add in eucalyptus, or you could add in extra dahlias or extra peonies or extra focals or whatever. And even that I found to be more finicky than what this channel was worth. Like, it just took me away from what it started off for me was being hands-off bulk flowers, right? And the more hands-on you make that, the more you kind of think, well, really, I either am going to go right down the path to do weddings and hire someone to work with me on that, or I'm going to just be insistent that this is bulk hands-off flowers. And so for me, it's not as much money as a wedding would be, but it should be nowhere near the headache and communication and time that a wedding would be either. So it's just keeping, those channels kind of clearly different. Now I'm just reading a chat here that says, oh, I just lost it. Sorry, guys.
I just have two things to add into that too. So I've had in the past years ago, and it kind of gave me a sour taste for DIY buckets. Was one year a girl had ordered 6 buckets of flowers for her wedding, and when she got there, she was like, "Oh, I thought there would be more." Like, even though they were big buckets, I was so proud of them, and she was just like, "Oh." It was, I forget how much it was. I was not charging enough, even so, but she thought it was going to be so much more. The other thing to be careful of, last year we had an order for 12 bulk buckets of flowers. I didn't want to do it, but I did for her because it was a planner that kept wanting these flowers. She was going to do the flowers for the couple. I said, okay, well, you need to pick them up at the farm. You need to have a vehicle, like a van that's air conditioned to drive them. Oh yeah, we're getting a U-Haul. It'll be fine. I was like, okay, well, make sure that U-Haul is air conditioned. When they got there, it was a pull behind, U-Haul trailer that they put them into. And then they also didn't tell me that they were driving them an hour and a half in this trailer in the beginning of May when it's 1 billion degrees out with no airflow in that. So when she got them, when they left the farm, they looked great. But after driving an hour and a half in a closed-in hot U-Haul trailer, they did not look good. So just that communication. I said, bring a U-Haul. They did, but not the right type in that. So there is that kind of, they want the experience and the maybe less expensive of DIY, but what are they giving up? Because they don't know. And they're paying for our expertise to give them when they do a full service wedding.
I just wanted to add one thing to what Janice is saying because from my experience, I'm sure other people can relate, is that often you're communicating with the bride or, someone, the bride and her mom or something like that. And then who shows up to pick up the flowers? It's not her. It's
With a pickup truck.
It's friends, family, the groomsmen or the people that would be on the other side of the aisle, and they didn't get any of the very specific communication that you were very thoughtful and careful to send out. And so they're like, oh, I didn't know. And it's just like, 5 days crammed into like a pickup, and then they're like, we were just gonna throw them in the back, and you're like,
exactly.
No, you're not. You're each holding a bucket, and there's gonna be between your feet, and there is definitely that to the best of your ability to communicate. Sometimes it's just doesn't matter.
Well, and like you say, I mean, it's not whoever you had the communication with probably isn't coming to pick them up. And whoever's coming to pick them up is doing all the errands that morning. So they arrive with a van filled with everything else.
Oh, I was going to stop here first because that works best for my pickup schedule, but I won't be home for 6 hours because I've got to go get the cake and pick up a suit and do whatever. And you're like, nope, you are driving these to whoever promised to have the air-conditioned garage where you guys are all going to make the arrangements.
Yeah.
So,
I had a bride one time who ordered 8 buckets, and she did ask, will these fit in my Subaru? Well, I used to deliver in a Subaru. I can tell you that 26 buckets fit in a Subaru. And so I said, no problem. But they showed up and they had, the seat was down, but the back seat was down, but it was filled with a cake and everything else. And I'm like, well, I said they would fit, but I didn't assume you had all this other stuff. They had to make 2 trips. I mean, it's just so, yes, people don't have a good visual of this. This is not a typical thing they see or experience, and so they really aren't sure what to expect. You need to describe it pretty well. I have put do-it-yourself wedding buckets here, but of course, this is any kind of a party or event as well, right? I mean, a lot of anniversaries or wedding parties that are, you know, being held outside in people's yards or whatever. I sell a lot of bulk buckets for that. One of the comments here is, yes, other farms do often sell grower's choice or something that is in a pallet and they price differently. That's another way to do it as well. I priced all my buckets at $120. I just keep, for me, it's all about simple. Like the amount of time you spend out of the field at your computer, sorting everything from invoices, etc., it's just extraordinary amount of money to me that I spend that much time. So I just keep everything I sell as simple as I can sell it, really. So that brings us to here, and we've got a few minutes to do chat, and I'm just highlighting this screen if you're looking for this or this recording or other work that Open Flower Network is doing, which is the Open Food Network project that we call Open Flower Network. And if you need to reach me, there's my contact information, and I'll leave this up while we handle some questions. How many stems do you include? For $120, it'll be 50 or 60, depends on the stems really, and usually about 8 to 10 focals, again, depending on what the focal is. And then most of them I always put in some line flowers, and I always put in some kind of a viney thing, and some nice foliage that'll work in bouquets. And then we're talking about secondary and filler flowers primarily. Are there other questions or other comments? Oh, here's one. Can you please talk briefly about dried flowers and wreaths as a sales channel? I'm going to turn this over to you folks because I think, Sarah, you do some of that, but I don't do that. I don't know if the others of you do.
I don't. Sarah can talk about it, but I have to turn on my light because it's getting dark in here.
Yeah, we do dried flowers, and we also make wreaths. I have mixed feelings about it because I love wreaths and I love making the wreaths, but honestly, when you break it all down and you look at what you need to charge for, of course it depends how complex and what size you're making things. But people really love like a big, something you're going to put on your door or on your wall that's going to be sort of a statement piece. But, you need to be able to charge like a few $100s for something like that if you're really looking at the amount of time you have into it, plus the amount of material. It takes quite a bit more material than you might think, like, unless you're going for like a very wispy kind of a look. But if you want to have something nice and full, so it can be a great way to make some off-season income, but I feel like you have to be very careful about like cultivating the right customer for that. We had pretty good luck also making like straight doing like wheat, or we grew flax and do like a golden flax wreath with big bunches of flax. And those are really beautiful. They're very simple, but they're beautiful in their simplicity, and you can make them a lot quicker. And the dried flowers are nice because it can extend your season. If you have, like Janice is saying, if you have a farmer's market that really goes through a longer season, early and late, the dried flowers are nice. Here we have a lot of tourists, so sometimes the fresh flowers aren't something they can take with them. The dried flowers are, fairly attractive that way, but it's never as exciting as the fresh flowers for sure. And they do require more handling, they're more fragile. And when we have had problems too, that you can get moths and bugs in there. And we had like a pantry type moth that got into some, and they turned like peonies and things like that into like little Swiss cheese holes. So, I didn't realize that when we first were getting into it, but that can be a problem too because we were storing them for the summer, getting ready. You know, they're typically a more of a fall um, item that people are looking for. So that was definitely a big disappointment when we started opening up boxes and we were ready to crank some stuff out, and it was like, wow, uh-oh, we have to go throw all this in our burn pile. So. But you know they can be a nice way to extend the season, but I think you have to be really careful with watching your costs on all of that because there is a lot more handling involved.
And when you think of it, if you have limited supply at all, like, you know, it's sort of like with anything, like you want to sell it fresh first because that's the least harvest time, and that in and of itself is a huge harvest time. But then if you're going to add more time to it, whether it's bouquet making or drying, you've got to be able to amplify that cost per stem. And it's hard to do that. Like you're saying, like for a piece, you have to charge so much to do. Maybe there's some exceptions to that. Like I did sell this year, just quickly shaped, you know, bunches of baby's breath, perennial baby's breath, which I left dry right in my bouquet bar. And so I sold them as like a dryable bunch. And people liked that idea that you take it home and you dry it. I'm not sure. And I think this year I will sell bulk flowers for drying in my bouquet bar, like just by the bucket, because people might like that experiment or activity for children to dry flowers or something. But I never had a lot of success selling them even to designers. And I know people say they're supposed to be trendy right now and designers want them, but boy, not even close to being my experience. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so we will wrap up. And I want to thank, first of all, my co-hosts for your time. Wonderful to have your experience shared. You know, it'd be one thing to present a presentation theoretically, but because I don't sell in all the channels, it's so nice that collectively we can cover off them all and actually have real life experience with them. So thank you so much for that. I couldn't have done this without that. And thank you to those of you who tuned in and listened in to this. Again, I hope it was helpful for you, and it will be available as a recording such as it is. For those of you who want to check back later, or for others who couldn't make it today. And please check out other events that might be coming up. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much.